Now, for one, legal and civic awareness can help prevent issues like police brutality, unfair labor conditions, and government policies that affect the youth directly. Moreover, knowing your rights can help you hold leaders accountable. In elections and governance, for example, youths have the power to demand change and promote justice. But without the knowledge of their rights, they cannot fully participate in the democratic process. And finally, knowing your rights can be a powerful tool for empowerment. So when you understand your rights, you can stand up for yourself and for others and demand fairness and justice. So let's talk. Joining me today to have this very important conversation are my guests. First, we have Oluwatooni Duke, who is a student. We also have David Ogundipe, who is the lead partner, Earnest Attorneys LP. And we have Hassan Taiwo Soweto, a national spokesperson, Youth Rights Campaign. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, that said,
my pleasure.
Thank you so much. That said, I'd like for us to go straight to the conversation, and I'd like to start from Hassan Taiwo. Now, what are some common rights that young Nigerians are unaware of? I know that you, for example, have been an activist for the longest time. You've fought for certain civic rights, and you have, been in the spotlight fighting for these rights. What are some of these rights that the young people are ignorant of?
Thank you very much for that question, because oftentimes people think that they know about the laws of the country. And on some occasions, you have had situations where people then realize that they don't actually know the entire laws that the country has. And those occasions when you have had that development, it can be very critical because it does show how much ignorance there exists, despite the availability or the supposed availability of this information. The usual, understanding of the laws or rights that people have, or people generally talk about, is about the basic rights to freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly. Beyond that, many people, not just young people, you are going to be surprised that even adults, older people, don't know beyond that. They don't know other things. They don't know, for instance, you'll be surprised how many people don't know, that you could actually recall your legislators, whether at the National Assembly or at the State Assembly. That's a power, that resides in the Constitution, and it's been there for so long. And, people have not even tried to test it because there's this very low awareness of it. People just think that once we have elected people, then whatever they do, we can't do anything until the next 4 years. For instance, you also have the right to shelter, right to education, right to health care, the right to protection under the law. These are rights that are equally enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution as amended, that Nigerian people, can actually utilize to demand accountability from the government. For many people are either not aware of this, or they are not aware of the extent to which they can compel the government to fulfill this right where there is any violation of this right in any way. I mean, for instance, there has been no attempt, for instance, for Nigerian youth, for instance, children who are out of school, to say that we want to challenge the Nigerian government, whether in any court of law, especially outside of Nigeria, on the fact that Nigerian government has consistently and routinely violated that right to education that all Nigerian children, should have access to. Of course, in the Nigerian Constitution, it is said that these rights are not justiciable. But when it comes to the question of some of these fundamental rights, like the right to education, shelter, and food, it's not only within the Nigerian society that these rights are held to be inviolable. There are human rights that are, held to the highest esteem, for instance, by international organizations like United Nations, like the African Union, for instance, so that even where the national court might not be the best way to test out, these laws, you could also actually challenge some of these things at the level of the, African Union, at the level of, other international instrument of adjudication that you have, which if we had tried it, if we decide to try it, can actually produce some startling result. And that's why, organizations like CIRAC, for instance, you have to commend them for what some of the things they have been doing in terms of trying to challenge Nigerian government on some of these issues in the law court, especially outside of Nigeria. Because the Nigerian state has been running for ever so long on that general ignorance of the Nigerian people and the helplessness that also exists. Because when people also know that even these rights exist, there is a feeling that nothing will come out of it if you try to demand for it or to challenge for it. And it's not just in the law courts alone that you can challenge for these rights. Protest, advocacy, and all of that are also basic instruments you can utilize to compel the government, to fulfill this right, to demand accountability from lawmakers, from those in power, where these rights are not being properly dispensed. So these are just a few of some of these things. I'm sure that lawyers and people can even tell you more about many rights that exist in the Constitution that are hidden and that nobody is talking about, but they actually, can become very important tools for Nigerian youth to begin to demand accountability from the government.
Hassan, for that. We'll definitely get to more of these rights because we have a legal practitioner with us. But in the meantime, I want to ask Duke. Duke, how do you think that the lack of knowledge about these fundamental rights affect young people's daily lives? Because most times we think that we just want us to know it for knowing's sake, but it can actually be life-saving. How do you think that is?
Personally, I would say that a great deal of us are affected when we do not know our rights. We tend to be cheated. We tend to be abused. We don't have the opportunity to air out our grievances, most especially when our rights are infringed upon. And just like the other speaker before me has said, many people do not know these rights. Even those that know the rights, they do not take any step in ensuring that their rights are protected. And as a student, this is one of the issues that we face even in our institution. There are certain things that are done that do not sit well with us, that even goes against our fundamental human rights, but nothing is being done, to curb and check these excesses. So a lot of people are at the receiving end of human rights being infringed upon. So it's not just something that the government can, we ourselves as people, we can actually come together to fight these things. There is something that is very, very common nowadays when we see that someone's right is being infringed upon. Rather than be our brother's keeper, we just tend to bring out our phones to record. We just record and that's the end, and we just upload these videos on social media. These videos go viral, yet nothing is being done to actually check the excesses or to curb these evil acts. So a lot of things has gone wrong. So ignorance plays the major role as to why people's rights are infringed upon. And it's, like I said earlier, we are greatly affected. The Nigerian youth, most especially, because I am a youth, so I'm speaking from the perspective of students. So the Nigerian youth are majorly at the receiving end. In Nigeria today, hard work is no longer based on the typical 8 to 5 job. Many youths that work hard, that earn legit money, live in fear of actually having a good life, having a comfortable life, because of the fear of being termed as a Yahoo guy or something. So people are not free enough to live the life that they want to live, because someone somewhere is going to do something wrong. Someone somewhere is going to, hurt them. Someone somewhere is going to say something that will demean them. So all of these things contribute to the whole issues that we face when it comes to human rights and its infringement. So I would say we are greatly affected, and it's not something that personally I am happy about. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. Okay, so let me ask the legal practitioner, what do you think, that's to David now, what do you think are some instances of injustice that could have been avoided if the youths knew their rights, and not just youths, basically the citizens, if they knew their rights?
Okay, thank you for the question. Can you hear me? So, as a prefatory remark, let me say that I share the view that we have a country where people are largely educated, but legal illiteracy is still a huge challenge. And most of the times I like to draw a distinction between being educated and being legally literate. Because if you see the intervention of people on many topics on social media and other platforms, you will see that why it reflects education, it does not necessarily reflect legal education. Now, there are many components of our lives, many sectors that contribute to this ignorance of the law that people travel with. And the first culprit, Nollywood. As a lawyer, we go to court every time. Then when you come back, people ask you, who won? Who lost? They are saying that because typically what they see in Nollywood is that someone is arraigned today, trial today, then judgment is delivered. That is one. The second aspect, I think we have a largely inefficient law enforcement systems. And what they like to do, they like to play to the gallery. For instance, the issue of identification parade. The Constitution is clear. Every person who has been alleged of committing a criminal offense is presumed innocent until the contrary is established. How is the contrary established? In a court of law, competent court of law. There is arraignment, there is trial, the prosecution makes their case, the defense makes their case, the court weighs the cases made and pronounces a judgment. But you see, the Nigerian police, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, all of them, they go for a night raid, arrest some young people. The next thing you see on the news, all of them are paraded with placards, stealing, internet fraud and all that. And we have a society that is not so exposed that once people see you, it sticks. So if you look at the right to dignity of human person and the right to presumption of innocence, I think the practice of that, live televising and arraigning people, putting people up, their faces on television without trial, I think it is bad. Many of such persons have been pronounced innocent by the courts. But the question that has been drawn on their names, on their faces, on their characters would remain. Not many people are aware of what eventually happened during trial. But we have an overzealous law enforcement agency which feels that, okay, once we arrest someone, just to show that we are doing something, let's flash the face of the person, on the newspaper, on the internet and all that. So it affects everybody. You understand? I also fault the print media. You read news articles and you see things like son of Honorable Justice XYZ arrested for murder. You see, for every adult, complicit has to cry, liability has to cry. It's strict. It is called strict liability. So if Joseph, for instance, has been arrested for armed robbery, you know, whatever you want to do in the print media, tie it to Joseph. But Joseph has a reputable father, because you want to sell, you know, the papers or whatever. You are saying Joseph, son of XYZ person. So I think that's a kind of violation of the rights of the person's father, the right to dignity, the right to privacy, because it has not been established that the purported crime was committed at his behest or at his instruction. So there are many of such rights. And I think Nigeria is one of those countries with many laws. If you look at Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act, if you look at the Labor Act, if you look at the Constitution, you know, there are rights. There are rights. Another issue with Nigerians is that we know rights, but we do not know the limit to rights. I have the right to say whatever I like, but we do not like to acknowledge that the person who feels threatened or injured by our utterances, which is untrue, has the right to take it up. I have the right to throw my hand around, but the person who might be hit by my hand has the right to institute an action to enforce his rights. So it's a very broad topic, and I believe that as we proceed in this interview, we are going to unbundle it. So thank you so much.
Back to Hassan, how do you think that we can promote legal and civic awareness among the young people in Nigeria?
Well, I think that we have to start from the schools itself and see how the curriculum can be amended in order to ensure that you have subjects that can help to open the eyes of young people, even right from the the lower classes, to the nitty-gritty of our legal system, of our constitution, which is why it's really very sad that it is at this time when we are talking about legal illiteracy, that you are even having courses, like government and co being taken out of our national curriculum. Courses like history or thereabout. These are subjects that can help to teach young people about what society is all about and what are the underpinnings of every society. What is the role of rule of law? What are their, rights and obligations as citizens? And this kind of civic education right from a young age, can help to provide a foundation that can ensure that, we have citizens who are not just educated, but actually are educated about their rights and obligations as Nigerian citizens. Side by side with that also is the need to have some other complementary, measures, like programs on, social as well as traditional media that are specifically targeted at educating Nigerian people about their rights. And that's why this kind of interview session is very, very important. How do we then, turn into something that is more regular and that can attract a lot of viewership and that can ensure that the conversation itself is done in a way that, can break down, some of these things in a way that everybody can understand. Like, the legal practitioner that spoke just now, if someone that I think if, he presents his views like that in a program that is run consistently and that has a wide viewership, it can help, to begin to actually, improve the understanding of a lot of people about the things they don't know regarding their rights. Because many of the things he said are quite very interesting. And you'll be shocked at how many people do not even know any of this. For instance, this question about parading people, I've had occasions where I've had to directly challenge police officers over this. And it was a case that even involved myself. I was arrested at a protest alongside with about 15 other people. that it was that time it was the current public relation officer of the police at the national level that was the PRO at that time in Lagos. He was posted to Lagos for just about 2 weeks, and we were arrested at that time. And then he proceeded to organize a press conference at the CP's office, the police commander in Ikeja, with us assembled. And of course, I had to resist that and said that there was no way I would allow that to happen. It's a violation of my rights. And I'm not even going to wait to go to court. I'm going to resist it right here and now, because also has to be made about journalists and media practitioners also being aware of some of these things, because journalists play a very crucial role when it comes to building society. If journalists are aware of something, you can be sure that the whole society would know as time goes on. But many journalists are also very ignorant of this, because I had to challenge the journalists there and told them that if that parade went on, once I was done with this matter and I gained my freedom, I was going to ensure that their publishers are in trouble, because they ought to know as journalists that what they were supposed to partake in was completely an illegality. But the police still do that up to now. In fact, the PROs of police all over Nigeria, they have a budget for that. Almost every week, they're always parading one person or the other. Many Nigerians don't also know, for instance, that when you are arrested by the police or any security agency, a warrant must be provided. And then when you are taken into custody, you are not obligated to write any statement or to even say anything to the police except your lawyer is provided. So, and then you must not be detained past 24 hours. These are the kind of things that Nigerians don't know. Or where they know it, they do not know that they can enforce those rights. And sometimes what it takes is for you to be bold about it and say that I cannot allow this to happen. The Constitution specifies that these are my rights. If you don't fulfill those rights, I am not going to cooperate with you. That is sometimes what it takes. But unfortunately, the boldness to act in this manner is also very lacking among a whole lot of us. And that's why my appeal to Nigerian youth listening to us today will be to say that, beyond just the knowledge of our rights, if we don't have the willingness, to enforce those rights, to sacrifice whatever it might take to enforce those rights, then, we'll continue to live in a country where our rights will be routinely violated. To build a society where the democratic rights of people are respected, their right to life, to shelter, to education is respected, requires an active citizenry that is prepared to fight, for those rights to be respected. Because there's a reason why those rights are not respected. There are certain people who benefit, for the violation of those rights. The violation of the right to free education, to healthcare and co, for instance, is why, you have a lot of money being stolen by politicians in Nigeria. Because those monies, if they are not stolen, would actually be used to fund all of these social services. So in that sense, there are certain people who do not want those rights to be ever respected, because that is the only way for them to continue to steal national resources. So that in that sense, we then begin to realize, therefore, that the battle for our right to be respected, the battle for a society where the right of citizens are respected, is also a battle, to find the kind of society we want, the kind of Nigeria we want. And that is also a social struggle. And that's why we can't, we can't shy away from the fact that, we need a revolution altogether, to be able to redefine the character of the country we want. And on that basis, reshaping that country, according to that. And this is the last thing I will say on this. Young people need to have a bold vision of the kind of society they want. Having that bold vision also helps you to be able to oppose the status quo as it is, to derive the confidence to oppose the status quo as it is, because you have in front of you a clear vision of how a society should be, of how Nigeria should be. And if you have that kind of clear vision, it will inspire you, no matter where you are or no matter when you are encountering injustice, to be able to stand and say, no, this cannot happen.
Thank you so much, Hassan. We'll go on a short break now. This is still for Final Africa, and we're still talking about the relevance of understanding the rights, especially for the youth across the African continent. When we come back, we will look deeper into this conversation. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still for Final Africa, and we've been talking about youths and the citizens generally knowing their rights and the benefits of knowing your rights as citizens. I still have my guests, the amazing gentlemen who have been carrying the conversation so graciously. Duke, who is a student. I also have David, lead partner, Earnest Attorneys LP, and of course Hassan Taiwo, national spokesperson, Youth Rights Campaign. Now, before the break, Hassan was talking about the role of schools and the educational institutions. So I just want to come back to Duke. Duke, as a student, looking at everything that Hassan has said, would you say that the schools and the educational institutions are doing enough to play the vital role that they play in teaching civic education?
All right. Thank you very much for that question. If I were to be honest, I would say no. I think it was in the year 2020 where 3 subjects were merged together into one subject. We had civic education, social studies, and security education. They were merged into one subject to be taught at the junior secondary school level. So personally, I feel that schools are not doing enough, because now that we have 3 different subjects merged into a single curriculum, I feel there will be some sort of limitation on the calendar. There will be a limit to what the teachers can teach. There will be a limit to what the students can also learn, because I think a term has about 11 or 12 weeks in which they will take a midterm break and write examination. So the time frame is not usually favorable enough for teachers to be able to cover the entire scheme in that subject. So they just tend to pick topics that can be taught very fast. Whether the students understand or they don't, it's not really their business. And another thing I would like to say is that most teachers teach for the purpose of exam. They teach so that the students can pass. They are not really teaching so that the students can know. They just want them to read, to have a note they can read, write the exam, pass, and just move on to the next class. So I feel that secondary school teachers, or teachers in general, need to take their time in teaching these topics. I think the fundamental human right is a topic that can be taught across 3 levels. If they have done it in the junior secondary level, they can still do it again in the senior secondary level. It should be something that should be hammered in their heart from time to time. And I would like to end with this. Parents should not leave the bulk of the work for teachers. They should not leave everything for teachers. There is something called education from childhood, from the home. The family is the first agent of socialization. So the family should be able to inculcate in each child certain values, certain beliefs, certain system. They should get their children acquainted with these rights, so that the children on their own will be able to identify when their rights are being infringed upon, and they'll be able to speak up in the face of injustice. So the family should not leave everything to the school. Each agent of socialization has certain roles that they play in an individual's life at different points in time. So I feel the family is the first. So the family should lay the foundation. The school will only build on what has been laid in the family. So I think with that, if the family can, do better, and if our teachers can also teach, not with the intention of student passing, but for students to know and to know when to speak up, I think this issue will be sorted to an appreciable extent. Thank you
much for that. Very quickly, I'd like to come to David. How do you think that we can encourage young people to participate in politics and to hold leaders accountable? Because it's one thing to be educated about your rights, but we definitely see how things play out, especially in Nigeria, for example. Now we have a case at hand at the Lagos State House of Assembly where, due process is meant to be followed. the speaker was removed and then another speaker was put in, and now they say allegedly she's been removed and the former one is coming back. And usually these things follow the procedures of the law. But now it's like the law is being trumped by whoever, whenever. And so this can be discouraging for the younger ones who are looking to even fill up a position there so that they can represent their own kind. So how do we encourage people, seeing everything that's happening, especially in Nigeria as a case study, to participate in lawmaking, in decision-making processes?
Thank you, blessings. You see, I think Nigeria, as it operates currently, is a captured state, and it has been captured by people whose benefits lie in the ignorance of the people and their lack of consciousness. You see, every election year, they go to the market square to campaign from street to street. But one thing they do not do is to go to university campuses. There was a time that, it was a practice. So for instance, if you have a country with people like Professor Oshibanjo, the great Okonjo-Iweala, Mr. Femi Adesina, Professor Wole Soyinka, being led by the calibers of leaders we have, it is indicting. It is a collective embarrassment for us. There is a book I read where the person said the character of a nation is known by the men it crowns. So if the people we have in the presidency, governors, senators, are a reflection of the bigger society, it speaks volumes to our character. Now, it is difficult to see serious-minded people who care for their integrity, who make legitimate money, to develop interest in politics. And the reason is clear. It has been made unattractive for intellectuals. It has been unattractive for intellectuals, for people with integrity. Just before this interview, I saw Senator Natasha's interview on Arise, and she was making very serious allegations, very damaging one.
Okay, while we're waiting to reconnect with David, he was trying to make a point on damning allegations. Waiting to connect with him. Let me come back to Hassan. As a civil rights advocate in Nigeria, what are some of the challenges that you face? What are the challenges that human rights advocates face in Nigeria? Many thanks for staying with us. We apologize for that slight audio glitch. Very quickly, I'm just going to take the thoughts. We're still talking about youth and citizens in general knowing their rights and what the advantages are. So very quickly, I would just like to ask Hassan, what are some challenges that you face as an advocate in Nigeria, and what are challenges that generally human rights advocates face?
Well, the challenges can be summed up maybe into just one, and it is the challenge of a Nigerian state, a despotic capitalist state, that is not prepared at any point in time to allow the people to be able to express themselves, to organize themselves in order to hold government accountable. So we have a problem of a state that works in the direction of making it entirely impossible, which is why, regardless of what is done to reform the governance system, to reform the laws, to improve the constitution, to make the judiciary more independent, all of those propositions we have had over the time as to what can be done to make things better. all of those things have not worked to the extent that effort have been made to try and address some of these. All of those efforts have not worked because each time, everything comes up against a state that does not want anything to work. And that's why when you go back, for instance, 5 years ago, when we had NSAS, which was a major upheaval in society that demonstrated that the Nigerian people were fed up with a certain unit of the police, as well as the entire police organization itself, because of how they had been routinely violating the rights of the Nigerian people. And on the basis of that whole struggle, certain recommendations were made with the governments at national and state level, agreeing to some of those recommendations regarding police reform, regarding improvements in the wages and conditions of the police, regarding retraining and all of that. 5 years after, when you look at Nigeria again, you will not even think or remember that a major struggle of that nature had happened 5 years ago. Because when you look at the level of police brutality we see have today, it's as if nothing happened. It's as if people did not even speak up at any point in time. And that is just an example, just one example. By the time you begin to look at electoral reform, for instance, just how much tinkering we have had regarding our electoral system, and yet the electoral system still is not accountable, cannot be trusted, votes are not counted, people don't feel that their voices are heard through the ballot. Then you again see that we have a state that does not want anything to happen. If you look at constitutional reform, it's the same thing. How many times have Nigeria's constitutions been amended? I can't even count. And yet you still have the same agitations on the same problem. So that what we face really is a state that does not want the people to attain their sovereignty. And that's why, it has become very clear to some of us who are active in the struggle that it will take a social revolution that overhauls the entire Nigerian society before we can begin to see any modicum of progress in all of the issues we are talking about. We will need to tear down the current status quo and replace it with something else, something that is more in tune with the democratic aspirations of the Nigerian people. And what do I mean by that? It means that we need a new kind of government made up of, the workers and the poor and the youth, made up of Nigerians who actually struggle before they gain an income. A government made up of this class of people can be trusted to be able to make laws and to make policies that are aimed at making lives better for the mass majority. What we have had since 1960 are a repetitive government of exploiters, of looters, of people who are going to government on the basis of a philosophy of looting. So that at the end of the day, what they do for the next 4 years is not actually a violation of what they promised to do. It is actually a confirmation of it. And when you look at their electoral promises, their party manifestos and co, it's very obvious that what they are going to do for the next 4 years is to make life difficult for people.
All right, because, Hassan, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm so sorry, but this is the much we can take now because we really have to go. But I wanted to say thank you so much for your input so far. I would have loved to get Duke's final thoughts on this, but unfortunately we don't have enough time. But thank you so much, Oluwatooni Duke, who is a student. Also, thanks to Hassan Taiwo Soweto, National Spokesperson, Youth Rights Campaign. And of course, I don't know if David is still with us, but I want to say a big thank you to David Ogundipe as well, lead partner, Earnest Attorneys LP. We're hoping that those who are watching have, seen the relevance of knowing their rights, and, from here we'll know how it plays out. Thank you once again, gentlemen, for joining us. That's much we can take today on Fafanwa Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm sure that you now know why it's important for you to know your rights. Do also join us in our subsequent episodes as we discuss the challenges and the opportunities available to the youths across the African continent. Till then, I'm Blessings Mosugu. Do have a lovely day.